So, if I told you going into the second round of the series that going back to Indiana for game three and going back to New York in game three for these two Eastern Conference series, that these two series would be 2-0, you would believe me. But you would not have thought that it would be the road teams up 2-0 going back home and both in improbable fashion. I had said going into the postseason, and I think we all truthfully believe this. Unless you were a fan of the Milwaukee Bucks, a fan of the New York Knicks, a fan of the Detroit Pistons, a fan of the Indiana Pacers, a fan of the Orlando Magic, or the fan of the Miami Heat. I think everybody and their mother thought the Eastern Conference Finals was going to be the number one seed Cleveland Cavaliers hosting the number two seed Boston Celtics, and especially with the way the Cleveland Cavaliers took down the Miami Heat. They won that series 4 games to none by a record margin. And then Boston, they did lose to Orlando in game three. For the most part, they disposed of Orlando. And after watching how the Knicks struggled and barely beat a Detroit Pistons team who may not even have a superstar on their team yet, Cade Cunningham's a good player. I don't really count him in that superstar category yet, especially with the way the Celtics have also dismantled the Knicks 4-0 in the regular season going into these playoffs. And then all of a sudden, the Cleveland Cavaliers enter game one. Now, I had floated the theory that the Cavaliers had played better in game three and game four down in Miami without Darius Garland. Obviously, the ball was hopping more. Sam Merrill produced more. Max Strus produced more. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley were all over the place defensively. And I do think, as I mentioned on Tuesday's show in game one, Indiana's pace was so different than Miami. Their physicality was so much different than Miami. It was sort of a show shock to the system for the Cavs, who did get back in the game, but nobody else came along scoring but Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley a little bit. Jared Allen had to play better. Now, what I did not know entering game two was that DeAndre Hunter would get a dislocated thumb. Evan Mobley would roll his ankle and be hobbling around. And so the Cavs enter game two down 1-0 back in their arena in Rocket Arena. They go up 20 early. The crowd is bouncing around. Donovan Mitchell is playing great. Jared Allen's bringing great energy on the defensive end of the floor. Max Strus is turning back the clock to 2023 Miami Heat Max Strus. The Cavs' defensive intensity is ratcheted up. Tyrese Haliburton's getting nothing going. Pascal Siakam's really getting nothing going. It's really, Andrew Nembhard, Ned Smith's not doing much. It's mostly Miles Turner or bust early on for Indiana. But you could tell as the game went on, the Pacers got more comfortable shooting. But even then, the Cavs early on in the third quarter, after Indiana, gets a little bit of momentum, they get it back down to six. Cleveland comes back, they fire it back up, they get it up to 20 points at one point. And then in the fourth quarter, and even though Donovan Mitchell finishes with 48 points, there's just a terrible sequence of where there's an offensive foul on Donovan Mitchell. Max Strus obviously turns the ball over. The Cavs start doing in game two what they did in all game one, which is they can't buy a bucket. It's earned in a Donovan Mitchell isolation ball or bust. And yet again, they're still up seven with 40 seconds left. You get the offensive foul call on Donovan Mitchell, which I am glad, and I'm not just saying this as a Cavs fan. They did not call that a flagrant foul. I talked about it on the Nikola Jokic play on Lou Dort on Tuesday's show. I don't like when they just call every elbow in the world a flagrant foul. You do have to move your elbows a little bit. I do think, even when they say intent doesn't matter when it comes to flagrant, I have no idea how intent should not come into play because a flagrant is a hostile, unnecessary act, and unnecessary to me should mean intent. Nonetheless, though, you get obviously the missed free throw, the Neesmith putback, the Donovan Mitchell offensive foul, the turnover by Max Strus, and then we all know what happens at the end. Tyrese Haliburton gets fouled, and for all you fans out there that want to cry about that being a bad foul call on Donovan Mitchell, I get it. The refereeing was inconsistent. Indiana got a lot of calls in the fourth quarter, but that is not the reason why the Cleveland Cavaliers lost game two. And if you really do feel like the officiating cost your team a game, you don't know what it's like to actually bring home a championship because officiating does not decide games. I still believe players decide games, and I've been consistent on this. When Detroit whined about the call game four against the Knicks, when Luka cried about that tripping call against the T-Wolves in game four, who cares? You did not make the plays to win the game, and now the NBA comes out with their 2 minute report, and of course they say, well, actually, on the Tyrese Haliburton free throw, many people walked the lane early and it shouldn't have counted, which means he shouldn't have got the rebound, which means he shouldn't have shot the three ball, which means the Cavs should have beat the Pacers. I don't care. This is what happened. They did not call it. The referee stayed out of the way. Tyrese Haliburton missed a free throw. He bodied up, basically Ty Jerome, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen underneath, got his own rebound, and now this is where you're up to. You cannot let Tyrese Haliburton take a free there, even if you foul him, right, and send him to the free throw line. Worst case scenario if he makes both, because I don't know if he's going to get another offensive rebound and put back, especially with the time remaining. Worst case scenario is we're going overtime instead of, oh, we're going to lose the game. Um, One thing you cannot absolutely do is allow a free. And Tyrese Haliburton, listen, I've said I don't know if he's a superstar or not. Sometimes he disappears in big games, but he's been excellent in this postseason. Now, my debate partner over at Championship Ranks, Josh Unger, has been on the Indiana Pacers for 2 years. He boasts all the time about the Indiana Pacers. He called them making the Eastern Conference Finals last year. He called this being a tough series with the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I do not want to give any disrespect to Indiana, but I'm just going to lay this out there. If you really look hard and you examine what the Pacers have done the last two postseasons, so last year, round one, they were the number 6 seed. They face a Milwaukee Bucks team and they defeat them in six without Giannis Antetokounmpo. Then they're down 3-2 to the New York Knicks as a 6 seed in the second round. They win game six back in Indiana, but in game seven, we all know Jalen Brunson gets hurt. He's on one leg. And the Knicks do not have any of their Villanova guys there to sort of back him up. Obviously, at this point, Karl-Anthony Towns is not there. Mikal Bridges is not there. Um, they're missing Mitchell Robinson. They're missing OG Anunoby. Josh Hart was on one leg. I mean, they basically could not field a team out there in game seven. And that to me is the reason why the Pacers won. And I know you could say, well, the Celtics got lucky because Tyrese Haliburton got hurt in that series, and I give it to you there. Again, we got to be fair here on both sides. But then this postseason, they play a Milwaukee team. They get, a half a Damian Lillard before he tears his Achilles. And now in the second round, they get a Cavaliers team who is without Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, and DeAndre Hunter. And notice I did not say just Darius Garland because I do think that this Cavaliers team should be good enough just without Garland. But you can't with those two bigs and Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam. Missing Evan Mobley to me is the bigger miss in this series. And then DeAndre Hunter, another weapon off the bench who's been so good for them. And there's a reason why they made that trade with Atlanta, giving up Karis LeVert for George Niang because they needed another wing. Isaac Okoro is not a dependable shooter, as great of a defender as he is. So if you look really hard at the Indiana Pacers last two postseasons, they have gotten maybe the most breaks of injuries out of any team. Out of all the series they have won, they have not faced a full strength of that team. Now, you look at the Boston Celtics, they are 25 of 100 from 3 point range. And we know the Celtics, I've talked about it the last 2 years. We mentioned it. If eight guys just hit two threes a game, it's going to be really hard to stop. They're not doing that, though, in these two games. But the problem for the Knicks is both of their games that they've won, They've had to make incredible comebacks. A 21-2 run late down the stretch where Jason Tatum in both game one and game two once again disappears. And the Celtics aren't even really at full strength, even though Jaylen Brown's out there. He's dealing with a knee injury. Sam Hauser's injured. Kristaps Porzingis is not 100%. Um, and this is again a Knicks team that did do incredible comebacks, down 20 points in both games in the second half, and it's mostly been the Boston Celtics bricking wide open threes. And Jason Tatum not being that guy when it matters so much with the game on the line. Yes, he did get a dunk last night to give the Celtics the lead there on 90-89 on a super eye to the basket with terrible defense by the Knicks where nobody stopped the ball. But then Jalen Brunson comes back, he hits two free throws, and that's pretty much all she wrote because Mikal Bridges, who they make the trade for last year from Brooklyn to give themselves another legitimate wing. Not only does he hit the game winning three in game one and get the game winning steal, but he makes the game winning block here in game two on Jason Tatum. With, the Celtics, they do move the ball, but you can tell, as I said after game one, they have not been in a lot of close games, especially close postseason games, unlike the Knicks. And the experience shows because the Knicks, I mean, how many games of the Pistons, almost every game, right, came down to the last shot. And the funny thing about the Knicks is we kept saying you could make an argument. Game one, they came back against the Pistons, but they were outplayed in that game. Um, game four, maybe if a call goes the other way, maybe they lose that game. Game six, if Malik Beasley catches that ball and shoots that free ball and makes it, and we have a double, overtime situation in that game, maybe Detroit wins that game. And yet, in my opinion, if the Celtics continue to shoot well, they're probably up 2-0. So Jalen Brunson's been incredible. He's proven his worth. I thought Tom Thibodeau and the New York Knicks would be worn down after that Detroit series and with how many minutes Thibodeau plays his guys and Mikal Bridges not even coming out of the game in game one, playing 50 something minutes. I thought those guys would be worn down, and yet here they are. And if you would have told me the Knicks would have outshot the Boston Celtics from three in the first two games of the series, that's the only way the Knicks are going to win, and I would have told you you're crazy. I said the Knicks could not shoot with the Celtics. I was flat out wrong on that. We're not gonna really talk about Denver, Oklahoma City from last night. Oklahoma City got up early. It was over from jump. Oklahoma City and Mark Daigneault show why they have the best record in basketball all season long. But for Denver, they get the split 1-1. For them, they got to take advantage here. They got to win these next two in Ball Arena and go up 3-1 and put the pressure on Oklahoma City. I could see this thing going 6 or 7. I still don't know if Oklahoma City has a great answer for Nikola Jokic. For the Thunder's sake, they have to hope that the likes of Jamal Murray, Russell Westbrook, Christian Braun do not come with Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, and crew because that will make it a tougher game. And then Minnesota, Anthony Edwards, who, we talked about, he's 21, 22, 23 years old. The path he's taken last year takes out Kevin Durant in four, takes out Nikola Jokic. This year takes out LeBron and Luka. Clearly, as a Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant dog mentality, and yet he has 1 point in the first half of the second round, and that is without Steph Curry, who pulled his hamstring. Now, obviously, if they didn't have Jimmy Butler, they'd be completely done. This would be Minnesota in five. I know Jimmy Butler and playoff Jimmy came out 2 years ago and carried the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals. That was also with a different Heat team with a bunch of shooters around him in a weaker conference in the East. He does not have that in Golden State. As good as Podge is defensively, he's nowhere near the shooter Klay Thompson was. Buddy Hield is a really good player. Can he continue what he's been doing? Or he even had to change shorts at the start of game one. But Buddy Hield has been Steph Curry light from three these last two games. They're obviously going to need that to continue. And can Draymond Green give them any legitimate scoring punch? I do think that outside of Jimmy Butler, Golden State really does not have an answer for Anthony Edwards if he wants Dante DiVincenzo, Naz Reid, who's been an absolute killer these last couple postseasons for opposing teams, especially in the fourth quarter. He came up small. Julius Randle, who could not miss a shot against the Lakers in the whole series, could not buy a bucket against Golden State in game one. I predict all those guys will probably bounce back. Steph Curry is dealing with a hamstring injury, which is oftentimes weeks, not days. You know they're going to put heat on it. You know they're going to try to get him back for maybe a game five, maybe a game six. But I think it also depends on what the Golden State situation is. If they're down 3-1 and they feel like, oh my God, we have no shot to win the series, they may not rush him back. If it's 2-2 going back to Minnesota, I think you could see a potential rush back in a game five or a game six if they're down 3-2, uh, because they may feel like that they have a legitimate shot. So I hate the fact that this postseason now, Cleveland's all banged up. Boston's guys are playing, but they're banged up. We've often said that the NBA playoffs do come down to attrition. We did not see a ton of injuries in the first round. I think Steph being injured in the second round kills any chance for this Golden State Minnesota series to be competitive. I hope I'm wrong. I think it makes no sense that the NBA decides let's give players, 2 free days off in between round one games and every other day in round two in the Western Conference Finals. I think it should be reversed. I don't like the fact that we have 7 game first round series. As entertaining as the Denver Clippers series was, as entertaining as the Rockets Warriors series was, and even Knicks Pistons, those games were just as good. Games three, game four, and could you imagine the more intensity when you only need 3 wins to win a series versus four? I think we need to have less playoff games, and more space in between the second round and the Western Conference and Eastern Conference finals to give these guys more ability to rest up so that we're not missing stars for more periods of time. If Golden State had 2 days off, for most of the games in this series, maybe Steph only misses a game or two as opposed to 3 or 4. That to me is the big difference because we want these NBA stars to play in this series. I still think Minnesota is going to win the series. I still think Oklahoma City is going to win the series. Out east, I know Boston and Cleveland have to win 4 to 5. I'm not counting either one of those two teams out. I think Cleveland's in more trouble than Boston. Obviously, we'll find out the injury statuses of DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell as we go into game three here tomorrow night. Um, Now, Knicks, Celtics, they get 2 days off. They play Saturday afternoon. Boston and Cleveland obviously have to win game three to make these games a series. Otherwise, the last ever, series on TNT will be Knicks Pacers. And NBA Finals, we all predicted, right? Listen, I do think the Cavs and Celtics bounce back, and I think when we get back here on Tuesday, when we're looking at after game four, both of those series could be knotted up at 2 games apiece. And the weirdest thing, and by the way, I do think Oklahoma City, Denver will be 2-2. Minnesota, Golden State will either be 2-2 or Minnesota 3-1, in my opinion. It just depends on how much Steph Curry plays. And by the way, I said my main takeaway after game ones of the entire NBA playoffs were how many road teams won. Would you believe? And again, the NBA, out of all the playoffs, we talk about how much home court advantage matters in the National Basketball Association. Currently, right now in the NBA playoffs, the road team has a better record than the home team. And the only win from the home team in the second round was the Oklahoma City Thunder last night. Road teams are 5-1, straight up underdogs in the second round, something unusual in the NBA playoffs that we have rarely seen. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.